follow me there, just like my heart, pick a pleasure, salted, when capture still air.
Hello, hello. Come on in. Glad to have you. As usual, drop into the chat where you're coming from. And today's question is, what song would play forever as you enter the room? What's the song that you would want playing every time you enter the room? We have our friend Kat from Flagstaff. Dara's coming in. Dara Feldman, one of my favorite people around. Dara, we gotta chat a little bit, you and I miss you. We got Anna coming in from Apple Valley. Kat is here. We got Ruth coming in from Mexico. Bermuda Dunes, California. I thought we were just gonna say Bermuda, but I'm glad to have you here, Veronica. Casey from Puyallup is here. Chris Orber says Family by Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors. I'm gonna have to listen to that one. Someone already asked, will the slideshow be available? Some of it today, Lindsay, but a lot of it. Okay, Jane's here from Houston, Texas. The song would be Good Morning by Mandisa. Well, good morning to you. Hi, Sarah from Sammamish. Callie from Oregon, Happy by Pharrell Williams. Good one. Jessica, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Oh, that's a moving one every time you enter the room. I like it. Andrea's here. Andrea, I got your email. I owe you one back. April's here from Wisconsin. So fun to have everyone here as usual. We'll wait just one more second until we get going. Let's see here. I will allow attendees for the time being. You can see everything from everyone. It's always fun to see kind of who's coming in from the building. We got Allison here from California. Jeff from Shrewsbury. We have our friend Guru Prem from India. That's so exciting. Thanks for joining us. Avery coming in from Shoreline. We got Julie from beautiful Orcas Island. I couldn't agree more. Orcas Island, one of my favorite spots on the planet. Bogota, Colombia's here. We hung out yesterday, Lily. Good to see you. So exciting. So many people coming in from all over the world. As usual, thank you for showing up. Thanks for making time to be here today. I'm super excited to dig into the conversation, 10 practical tips for digital learning, because I really believe that we got to get good at this stuff and fast. And I know we've tried to adapt, and I know we've been building in some cool new strategies and doing our very best. And so here's what we've learned from creating presentations and trainings, from doing virtual PD. We do half days, we do full days. And one of the things that we get a lot is that this day, even though it was going to be 3 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours, it felt like it flew by. So what are some of the secret ingredients in that? How do we make sure that we keep engagement in spite of not being able to be there person to person? That's what today's all about. And so I'm going to go ahead and change the chat box so that it comes just to the panelists. We got a whole team behind the scenes, including Maddie and our friend Kwame and Michaela and Krista, all supporting whether you're on Facebook or here on Zoom. So any questions that you have for us today, you can go ahead and drop into the chat box. It has been set to private, so it only comes to us now. And we will make sure those get into a document so that I see them at the end, and we make sure all those questions get answered. Welcome if we have not had a chance to meet yet. My name is Houston. I'm one of the co-founders of Character Strong, and I could not be more excited to spend a little bit of time with you here today. The first tip, and it's not even on the list, so today is really going to be 11 practical tips, is to create a sense of autonomy and choice. And so instead of this going linearly, we want to make sure that we bring voices forward to allow people to choose where they want to go next. So would someone tell me, based on what you're looking at on the screen here right now, what's the first thing that you want me to talk about when it comes to the 10 practical tips for digital learning? I love it. The first one I saw here comes from Madison. She says, set up successful opt-in. We'll start there and then we'll go to something next. This first one, we learned, I don't want to say the hard way, but my guess is some of you have learned this along the way with the groups that you're working with, whether it's adults or students. But what we know is this, is that digital learning, even more than in-classroom learning, is really opt-in learning, whether we want it to be or not. Students can turn their cameras off, staff can turn their cameras off, and we could be distracted by lots of other things. And me as the educator or the presenter might not ever know. So why don't we go ahead and hit the nail on the head to start? So at the beginning of any training we do, whether it's a virtual professional development day with a school, a staff, or a district, or whether it's one of our trainings that we host with educators from all around the world, we start by talking through virtual norms. And one of those norms is the opt-in model. And so we encourage people who want to participate in the chat, they're feeling up for it that day, or are willing to be called on. We say, go ahead and change your name. Go ahead and change your name to have an exclamation point in the front of it if you're willing for the teacher or presenter or whatever it is to call on you. This helps me because when I'm looking at my participant list, I can very quickly, in fact, the exclamation points tend to rise to the top. So I can see people who have an exclamation point and their camera on are the people that I'm going to go to first to call on. Now, what we've learned in some situations is that the culture has not necessarily been set to encourage that sort of sharing. And if that's the case, my strategy for you might be something like this. In working with students in particular, what if before your first day of class, you made that intentional phone call or email or text remind home? And in that conversation, even if it's short, just say, hey, on the first day, I'm really excited about hearing your voice. And I'm going to ask people to opt into learning. And it would mean so much to me if you put an exclamation point in front of your name. So before you ever get to that first day, and you might find yourself only with 2 people with exclamation points, you do some pre-relational work to plant those seeds with key people by making a personal connection. Maybe if you don't have time to get every class and every student, maybe you reach out to a couple people that you know would be key influencers in that group. Maybe you've had them before, maybe you know about them, whatever that situation is, reaching out to some of those key people and encouraging them, asking them, hey, your voice is going to be super important tomorrow. Would you be willing to put an exclamation point in front of your name? So you pre-plant that seed and increase the likelihood of those students, maybe it's all of them or some key role models to role model what that looks like. You can also change your name, and in Zoom in particular, I do this by, if I'm in not a webinar setting, but in a meeting setting, you're able to click on the image of your face or the image of your default profile picture if your video camera is not on. And when you click on the little 3 dots there or right click on yourself, there's the option to rename. So I might also use question marks as an opportunity. If people are confused about a certain thing, I can get a quick snapshot on how people are doing. And you can ascribe different symbols to different meanings. In fact, you could also offer people to put pluses or those backslash next to their name for different purposes. Like a plus could mean that I've already engaged once today. So if I rename myself after I shared, I might end up sharing 3 times over the course of a class. And if I've shared 3 times, I put 3 pluses next to my name. And you could even incentivize sharing, recognizing that digital learning is hard and we want more engagement even though we're digital. And if someone shares 2-3 times, they get put into a drawing to win something at the end of that day or the end of that week. So lots of ways to use that. You could also use the backslash as a simple way to indicate that maybe you want to take a back seat today. So even in not being willing to engage, you're still giving people an opportunity to share where they're at. Backslash means I'm taking a back seat today. I'm not up for being called on. So whether they're up for being called on or not, they're still actively participating and declaring where they are at on any given day. Let's go ahead and navigate myself back to the menu. Where do we go next? Drop into the chat what you want me to talk about next, and that's where we will head. I'm waiting for the first one to come in. Connection before content. Thank you, Martha. Martha's a legend and actually we got Bindi and Martha both back to back saying connection before content. So let's go there. What we know coming back in the fall is that students will have more anxiety and trauma than they already had. We know that we're sort of collectively experiencing trauma at a tier 1 level in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of school coming back virtual or in person, and layered on top of that are the conversations around social and racial justice in our country and beyond. So all those things are added on top of an already stressed out generation. So what we know is in order to be as preventative as possible in terms of what we know is for a number of students, increased social isolation. What we know in order to be as thoughtful as possible, putting a relational focus from the very beginning, more than we ever have been before, we need practical tools to bring relationships forward, even very, very small ways. So it could be the first 5 minutes of class, first 10 minutes of class, especially early on in the year, relational focus. So what does that look like? Well, we can get creative with how we do this. It doesn't always have to be just a get to know you type question or a feelings type word. We'll share some of those strategies, but here's one of our new favorite activities that actually lives inside of our new advisory lessons. So this one, I call it picture prompts. The way it works is you ask a student to choose a box. Now this could be a choose a box for you, or it could be to choose a box for themselves. And that box reveals a mystery photo that then is designed to prompt a share. So someone in the chat box, would you drop in what letter and number you would like me to click on? I saw B10 first from our friend Angie. She's the best. Beautiful. So this pops up a image that is designed for me. Okay, I look at it, it looks like subway stairs. And so I get to share for 30 to 60 seconds about something that this sparks in me. Let's see here. So the last time I was in New York, I was actually there because I was in an RV. This was 2 years ago with one of my best friends, BC. And BC is this just legendary guy who spent the past 10 years traveling the world, telling stories of nonprofits and the work that they do in different areas. He's just a gregarious, awesome dude. And he'd been spending a lot of time traveling the world, and he wanted to have impact more locally. So he started something called the Traveling Good. And they went on a massive RV tour around the country, stopping in 10 major cities and hosting events to celebrate the good that was happening in each city. So bringing passionate people together and pairing them with local nonprofits to figure out how these passionate people's skills and time could best serve locally. Awesome idea. And I got to join for a small portion of the trip. So I landed in Nashville, and in this RV, we packed up, I think there was 8 of us, and we drove from Nashville up through DC and into New York. And when we got to New York, we ended up being hosted by this incredible guy who I'd never met before, but he's also a big believer in random acts of kindness. And so we got a chance to spend the night with him, and we ended up meeting with my cousin and going to this 1990s dance party. So I was wearing a Space Jam t-shirt and some jean shorts, and I felt very cool. That's my share based on this image. And so you can see, I haven't told that story in a long time, but instead of just get to know you questions, sometimes there's power in imagery to drive forward conversational shares. So what if at the beginning of each class, you could even utilize this tool for an entire 30 days where each student a day got a chance to share And that's outside the context of advisory, right? In advisory, we would spend longer digging into that relational component. But what if every class had some simple, small 30-second to 5-minute thing that is woven in to your content before you ever get into the actual academic component? Someone's asking, someone said, Space Jam shirt. I agree. Pamela's asking, what is this activity called in the advisory curriculum? It's in our relationship toolbox, our menu, and it is called Picture Prompts. And someone asked, can you show more of the photos? Yeah, let's check out this one. We have running, for example, old cars, flower, books, deflated basketball. So some people will take them literally, some people will take them metaphorically, some people will talk about being in that space themselves, and some people will talk about something that it reminds them of. I did this yesterday with a school in Colombia, which was an awesome morning, and the picture that came up was one of the dentist, and we started talking about how we both have night guards because we grind our teeth. And we all of a sudden started having this cool conversation about something we had in common because we made the time and space for it. These are in the new lessons that we have in the advisory curriculum, and it's part of the relational menu. So when we do send out the slides for today, you will get a version of this, but just smaller, because we want to leave this for people who are engaged in our advisory curriculum. Let's go ahead and go back to the main menu. And Crystal came in hot before I even asked. Consistent routines. Create consistent routines. This could be similar in some ways to the connection component. Brian says, routines, I love routines. Well, I like having some sort of control in this ridiculously chaotic time where everything spirals into the nexus of oblivion and uncertainty. Well put, Brian. Poetic. And so this is my practice, or my one practical idea on how to create a consistent routine. This comes inspired from an amazing educator and character strong presenter. His name's Coley Wietenhans, and he teaches at the high school level. And he had an incredibly engaged online learning class. And one of the things that they started every class with was a very practical scavenger hunt, right? So it immediately got people engaged. We shared this idea at a recent training, and some woman said students who normally wouldn't have their cameras on all of a sudden had their cameras on to participate in these scavenger hunts. So again, some sense of choice here, which allows people to choose which scavenger hunt they want to participate in on any given day. So before I jump into this, I'll take a step back to talk about creating consistent routines on a philosophical level. We know from trauma-informed practices, we know, especially with what's going on presently in our world with the pandemic, that students, all of us, but students and young people in particular, crave a sense of stability. So class starting on time and class starting with something that is really consistent and also ending with something that's consistent can be a really powerful way to make sure, even on a very basic, practical, logistical level, we're creating a sense of stability in young people's lives. So maybe it is the first thing they do when they show up is they answer a question in the chat. Maybe it is when they first show up, we are talking for 5 minutes about people's experience with online learning or with COVID. Because if we ignore those things, they don't just go away. So making time for that as a consistent student voice coming forward. And maybe it's at the end of each class, you end with a quote, or you empower students to bring a quote to end class, and you assign different students different quotes, so that there's always this sense of the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes. I'm looking here at the create consistent routines. This would be one idea, would be at the start of every class, you have a small scavenger hunt. Now these ones are designed to be more a part of, again, of our advisory curriculum. And so they're a little bit longer, but you could even have a one item scavenger hunt. Looking at this menu, drop into the chat which scavenger hunt you'd like to look at right now. Crystal coming in hot, and she says the love list. So it comes up, the idea would be you're asking students right when they show up to class, they have to bring to the camera or to the chat box something you love, something you know someone else loves, something lovable, something you used to love, and something cute, right? So this is a 5 item scavenger item list, but it doesn't have to be that, right? Especially if this is sort of a core content class. One of the things you can do is just have a one item list. So maybe it's something you love. And I can look around right now, the first 30 seconds of class, and I will tell you that something I love is, let's grab it. This is something I love. It is a piece of wood that was polished and lacquered by my Uncle Rick, who was in a pretty bad accident a few years back. And one of the things that he's gotten even better at in the time since is woodworking. And so he found this stick, polished it, and gave it to me for Christmas this year. And I love dancing, and it reminds me, I call it the dancer, right? So that's my item. I bring it forward. And so the idea would be that even a one-word prompt can create a sense of immediate engagement and very personalized to each student. You get a chance for a few people to share. Even if they don't bring something forward physically, they could type it into the chat as well. Someone's asking, then does everyone share? It depends on how much time you have in the context of your class or the size of your group. I think that it's healthy to have at least 2 to 3 people share an item or more, depending on how many items you're asking them to bring. But I think you increase engagement by either having people snap if they relate to it, or thumbs up if they relate to it, or they can always use reactions in the Zoom room. And of course, you can also have them engage in the chat by sharing their own thing by typing it out or sending a link. Kelsey at the chat saying, I have a ton of Harry Potter collectibles next to me. My students know from day one about my obsession with Harry Potter. I see you and I raise you, Severus Snape's wand. Respect, Kelsey Clayton. Thank you for sharing. We have some things in common. The whole point here, of course, is to engage people right away and create that sense of consistent routine so that students know what to expect right on time when they get going. And that stability and that immediate sort of sense of engagement, opening and closing, are going to be really important when it comes to online learning. What do we go with next? Waiting in the chat to see. I see role model with adults. Heather, or no, this is 806 Borrero. I don't know if that's your real name, but if it is, I like it. 806 Borrero says role model with adults. Let's go here. This is one of my favorite ones just to bring forward because I think it is a healthy reminder and sense of accountability. Now let's start with this. First, an empathy statement. I know we have 1,000 things going on. I know in the context of being at home and trying to work from home, you're juggling relationships and your role as a family member or a roommate, spouse, parent, whatever that situation is for you. And so we get, and we often preface our trainings with the understanding that that is going on. But here's what I want to ask. Have you had a successful staff meeting with full engagement online? And if the answer is no, then my question is, why not? Right? Sometimes it's easy to get frustrated when people aren't engaging, especially the way that you want to, but it's helpful to know what gets in the way, what prevents us from actually engaging full out. And I would suggest that in many ways, the reason why not, now, of course, there's always going to be extenuating circumstances, but one of the reasons why not is because we are sometimes asking for more time than is needed. And when people feel like their time is wasted, they're automatically going to disengage. So one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is this going to be the best use of our time? And can any of this be done asynchronously if it doesn't require active engagement? Part 2, if we are being asked to juggle multiple things on the side, then are we being given proper time and space to actually engage with what's being presented to us? And part 3, the one where I think we require the most self-accountability and the most honesty and the most humility, is simply, are we trying to multitask even when someone's doing their very best to present something towards you in the moment? We see quite often doing in building virtual professional development with individual schools or districts, when we ask for that opt-in, even at the beginning of the training, before we've said really anything, Sometimes we'll be with a staff of over 100, and you'll get maybe 2 or 3 people who are putting an exclamation point in front of their name. Now, I think, to me, that is a very humbling reminder that if we as the educators aren't willing to participate, even in a training about developing participation around virtual learning and relationship building, I think we need to be willing to check ourselves and ask ourselves, what are we willing to bring staff to staff before we ever ask of it of our students? If you know Character Strong's work, you know how much we believe in adult behavior change. And what I know is this: if we aren't willing to put in the work ourselves, we should never be willing to ask it of the young people that we serve. And so if we're only getting 2% or 10% of people in a staff meeting who are stepping up to engage, I would start to challenge that for us as individual educators to say, what do I need to do to bring my very best to other people on my staff or even outside entities who are trying to present something meaningful during this time? And can we give them the benefit of the doubt? Can we even just for once see if we can get 100% engagement? We want it of our students. And so what does it look like to bring that for ourselves? So we start to ask ourselves some questions. I know for me, my attention drops at different parts of different presentations for a variety of reasons. So checking that for myself is going to be a really important self-assessment. Because if I know where my attention starts to drop, I can try to intentionally fill those pits in my own teaching to prevent that from happening. Maybe it's 10 minutes in, maybe it's for a certain amount of time where someone's been talking without me having to respond in the chat is more natural for me to check out. Maybe if there's nothing visually stimulating for me on the screen, right? So what are the ingredients for me that I need to be engaged? And if I know that's true for me, then what do I need to do for my students? My challenge as staffs would be to have one PD day, whether it's as a full group, or maybe it's with your PLC or your department, with the explicit purpose of attention tracking, where someone's being asked to present something for 30 minutes. And as a group, you set a set of agreements or norms that say, I'm asking for feedback right now. So please tell me, as I'm teaching this 30-minute lesson, just in the chat, let me know with a symbol or with a scale of 1 to 10, where your attention's at throughout this lesson. So you can actually track where attention is being kept and time code it and start to reflect, where am I losing or gaining? And what can I do to fill those pits? And how can we make each other better? With the ultimate challenge of what would it be like to have one staff PD day where everyone has their camera on, everyone has an exclamation point in their front of their names, because they know that if we're not willing to do it today, then certainly our students won't be willing to do it tomorrow. Back to the menu, what comes next? I'm seeing EIR coming in from Emily Bevington. Good choice, Emily. EIR stands for everything is relational. Even when we're talking about academics, what can we do to weave social emotional learning, character building, and relationship building into everything that we do? With a lot of different platforms, virtual backgrounds is one option on how to create a sense of engagement, even without it relating or being directly related to what the content being taught that day is. So what if you had some backgrounds that you share with students that represented different things? Maybe blue is representative of that you're not having a great day, that you're feeling a little bit morose or low energy. Maybe you use yellow to show that you're having a more bright day, a more happy day. Now, if this isn't relatable to the students that you serve, maybe it doesn't work as much for secondary age students, maybe another one that you can use would be feeling words, right? So we renamed earlier to talk about engagement. I have an exclamation point. Let's see if I add that exclamation point in front of my name. But what if I also was given a menu that I was able to, number one, expand my emotional vocabulary, but number two, declare, even in my name, how I'm feeling on a given day. So people, Robin in the chat is mentioning you could use zones of regulation. So that background could be a really easy way to represent that zone, the zone that you're in on a given day. For middle school or secondary, high school age students, maybe it's declaring a feelings word. Most people's emotional vocabulary are the 4 basic feeling words, which is mad, sad, glad, and afraid. I just like the rhyme. But underneath each of those are varying degrees. And the difference between annoyed or disappointed or angry, those things have a range. So you could use emojis in your name, or you could say, you know, today I rename myself, I'm going to keep the exclamation point, but in a box, I'm also going to write enthusiastic. Right, so now I am weaving into the fabric of what I do, that relational component. And as an educator, I can quickly see how people are feeling across a wide group of people on my screen. I liked that I was excited to share this stuff today. So enthusiastic is why I put that there. And I got yellow in the background. So I am double dipping. We also can weave that in a different way. Instead of a feelings word, you could simply do a temperature check. Now, sometimes it's healthy to do these in a more private one-to-one setting, but if you create the space in your classroom where this is okay, another way you can engage or weave this in is by simply saying on a scale of 1 to 5, how you doing today? So I have the exclamation point. I have a 4 out of 5. My body's a little sore. I feel a little bit tired from a long week. So that's why I'm at a 4 today, but I could just plug that in, and then you as an educator get a very quick snapshot on how people are doing, as well as other people seeing how the students are doing in their class. And so that idea that everything is relational, if we make low burden ways to integrate it into what we do. Final way, or simple, silly idea you could use with that name change as a practical way to engage people and make it relational is you could ask one-word questions that then they incorporate into their name, right? So instead of, you know, this used to be a practical way to take attendance live. When someone says Houston, instead of saying here, I could have a one-word thing I'm responding to, like favorite ice cream flavor, or what is one smell you'd like to smell for the rest of your life? And mine would probably be, I think it's peanut butter. Scott says bacon. Right, so now I'm not doing more of an emotional thing, I'm doing more of a directly relational thing where across the board, even while we're learning, I get to see other people in my class and what their one smell they'd smell for the rest of their life. The whole premise is this, just because you're teaching math or science or English or history or whatever it is online doesn't mean that you can't weave relationship building into that thing in a very small and low burden way. I'll change my virtual background to come back here and let's bring it back to the main menu. What's next, team? Tell me where to go. I see Tanya Albert says CYOA, or choose your own adventure. For our purposeful people users, I'm super excited to share this with you. This is coming very soon into your inbox. It is some practical ways to change some of our in-person components of the toolkit into a real life virtual sort of strategy. So like I've been trying to role model at large throughout this whole thing, one of the cool things that you can do with Google Slides as an example is that if I exit this presentation, one of the things you see here is that each of these are actually linked to different slides within the presentation. That's why I'm able to navigate to this throughout this presentation in a way that doesn't feel linear. So choose your own adventure is a really fun sort of decision tree type of model that allows for students to have autonomy or ownership over how the lesson goes. So even if it's just 2 choices, there's some cool power in that. But this one, of course, has a whole menu of options. So which one do you want me to demonstrate today? If we only get to look at one of these examples, which one should I demonstrate? Drop it into the chat. All right, I see a lot of things coming in. Let's go empathy. Empathy is one of my favorite practical ones here. If I click on empathy, it shows me our definition of what the trait is. So the ability to understand and connect with the feelings of another. And if I click one more time, it describes what this activity could look like. So you grab a virtual beach ball, you'll see it on the next slide, And then you can fill in each section with a feeling word. Maybe it's sad, angry, frustrated, excited, lonely. And as a added challenge, ask your students to help you generate some feelings for the ball. So when you're ready to go, you toss the ball by calling out a student's name. The student should pick a color that you click on to reveal a feeling word. Krista, could you help me out with this in just a moment? I'm going to have you turn your video on and we will play a quick round of this. So the example would be if whatever the word you chose is, you use that word in a sentence of some way. This is, of course, elementary oriented. It's to help young people develop and expand their emotional vocabulary. All right, Krista, you with me? Or Michaela? Oh, there she is. Perfect. Hi, Krista.
Hello.
For those of you who don't know her, Krista's always behind the scenes on the webinar. It's her fault that we do so many webinars and why they're all awesome. So this is Krista. And Krista, choose a color for me.
Let's go green. It's my favorite color.
Green. Perfect. Ooh, hopeful. So Krista, the idea would be you say the word. We're pretending like we're in kindergarten right now. So you say the word and then you're going to use hopeful in a sentence.
Hopeful. I am hopeful that the pounding that's occurring in my kitchen right now is going to lead to beautiful new cabinets. Hopeful.
Really well executed, perfectly. And then I can click back onto the little ball icon in the upper left, and it takes me back to the icon that you see here. And then Krista could pass it to someone else by saying someone else's name. So we could play this silly game of toss the beach ball, but we can't do it in person. So how do we adapt it to online? Well, we get creative. So if you're a Purposeful People user, our elementary SEL and character toolkit, you'll be seeing this whole menu of items will be sent your way early next week so you can get in there and build some of your own. The overall category here, though, when it comes to digital learning is how fun and meaningful it is when students get to have a voice in where their learning goes that day. So creating lessons that can be used in two different directions, and maybe on day 2 you come back and you just do the other one. So it's not like you're building twice as many things. You're just giving students a sense of ownership in where they want to go on a given day. Martha in the chat says, couldn't you also do this by having students share a story where they remember feeling that way? Absolutely. Of course, activities like this can be adapted up or down or in different directions depending on your student needs. Kristen says, this can be used in middle school too. Awesome, absolutely. I love these practices because you can totally take these and make them real for the students that you relate with or relate and work with every day. Where are we going next? We got 20 more minutes and a few more to cover. Perfect. 8:06 says POM. It's good to know. I'm gonna go ahead and click on my name because I have to do something real quick. I'm gonna change my picture. Lovely. All right. POM stands for Power of Moments. One of our favorite books called Power of Moments talks about how powerful it can be to take an otherwise average moment and make it really good, or take a low moment and bring it and rise it up. And sometimes we actually remember those things the most. My favorite example from the book is that there are people who work at Disney whose like entire job it is to look for people who are spilling. Because if someone spills something on their shirt at Disney, especially if it's a young kid, that can be a day ruiner, not only for the kid, but for the parents as well. So practically their entire job is just looking for that to happen. And when they see that, they run out and they bring a shirt, a brand new Disney shirt for free, and give it to that kid. So they take a low moment and make it a powerful one. In our trainings, the trainings that we host, like our Relaunching Relationally training or our equity, empathy, and implementation training we have coming up, we try to get pre-survey data to learn about the people who are showing up so that we can celebrate them in meaningful moments. Sometimes we'll give away baby t-shirts. Sometimes we will give away other sorts of swag or recipes if we know they're working on cooking more. We try to be really personal in what we do. Because we don't know a lot about the people here, we've just been paying attention to the chat today to use a power of moment for someone here. Fun fact, the team will drop it into the chat, but I am launching my first book September 22nd. It's called Deep Kindness. And I cannot wait to share it with you all. It's being published by Simon & Schuster, and I wanted to give away a copy today. And the way that it works is I'm going to turn off my camera, and the image that I have uploaded on Zoom is going to be the name of the person that gets this copy, which is really funny because when I turn my camera off, the winner goes to Chris Weber, who in the chat just said pre-ordered the day it came out. So Chris Weber, I got you. We're going to send you another copy, which you can practice deep kindness by sending it to someone that you care about or that needs more kindness in their life, one of the two. Thank you, Chris, for all of your participation and for being so invested in the work that we do. You all are the best. POM stands for Power of Moments. The idea would be, how cool would it be to increase the engagement in your class by offering, maybe it's once a week, once every 10 days, you create a sort of random schedule, but at some point in the middle of the class, you just celebrate one of your students by giving them a prize. It could be a $5 gift card, it could be a virtual prize, it could be something that you know that they love. The point is this: sometimes even those very low cost moments in terms of time, money, energy, sometimes those are the things that surprise and delight people the most. And if we do them at random points, it encourages people to want to show up because it could be them on any given day. Where are we going next? We have a few more left. Ashley, hi Ashley, how are you? So excited to see Ashley here. And she says RMTT, which stands for reminded more than taught. One of our favorite quotes internally here at Character Strong is we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed, which is a Samuel Johnson quote. And so one of the things that is going to be necessary in online learning is bite-sized learning. So trying not to drown people in information because we can only retain so much. And in the online world with added stress, that's going to be a more challenging problem than even ever before. And so setting up a remind group or a Google Classroom or Facebook group, whatever that looks like in the context of your role or your class, and creating little mini reminders at the end of a lesson or a day after the lesson is going to be really powerful. So for example, something that we will send out in the email after today, not only all the links and the replay to what we talked about here today, but we'll also send you this little image and I will change these acronyms so that they are spelled out for you. So we'll send you that image as a simple reminder of the 10 tips. So you can print it out or put it somewhere that you'll see often. And what we know about effective implementation is that a big part of effective implementation is actually just dissemination. So sharing information and helping people learn is sometimes more important than the curriculum itself. So if I were an administrator, encouraging people to take this really sort of big and overwhelming list of 10 things, one of the things that I would do for anyone that I know attended this webinar, for example, I might as an administrator say, hey, just a quick reminder, you should try out the feelings word activity from that everything is relational category. So I would give that little reminder to my staff to encourage action on that day and encourage micro actions to create small habits that lead to the bigger ones. The premise here is we all need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And in virtual learning, that's going to be more important than ever. So what can we do visually and practically to help people put learning into action in small ways after the fact? Bringing it back to the menu, we got a few more left. I believe encourage dynamic engagement and GOTGI. Where you want to go? Dynamic engagement from John Rodney. One of the things that I am excited about with challenging problems like virtual learning is that it changes the space wherein we learn, which means we also have opportunities to change the way that we engage. Engagement used to be maybe handing out a paper or doing a group project, and there's certainly ways that are fun and meaningful to create that engagement in a physical classroom. But in an online space, you've actually started to create new and in many ways more dynamic ways to encourage engagement. So for example, you can use something like camera on and off if. You can use this to be a relational strategy, like keep your camera on if you like pineapple on your pizza, or turn your camera off if you don't. You can also use it in an academic sense. Keep your camera on if you feel like you're ready to move on to the next section, or turn your camera off if you feel like you aren't ready, right? So you can use it as a formative assessment to show engagement and deepen learning, but you can also use it in a relational way. You can also encourage dynamic engagement using the chat and using some simple copy and paste features, right? We don't get to use copy and paste very much in the physical classroom, but we can use this in a virtual one. So the team is going to drop into the chat something that you can copy and paste to tell us how you're doing today using this simple prompt. You all know or have used the famous Mad Libs. That's what we're using today. So I've just changed it so everyone can see everyone's response. Go and drop in the chat how you would respond to this prompt. Copy and paste it one more time. And I'm going to say, I feel cheetah today. 2 words to sum up my learning are quick and it's a noun. Madison says, I feel fennec fox today. Entertaining in kitchen. Scrambling multitasker. Lioness today. Swimming and roller coaster. Lizard today. 2 words to sum up so far are focused and pencil. Dolphin today. Slow and building. This is so fun. The range of responses here. Scott says, I feel jumping and spatula. Feel sleepy koala today, Clara. Owl, stretching mind. Tiger today, exciting and rolling chair. Engaged and notebook. All so good. Beautifully put across the board. Obviously, the chat box is a unique dynamic because even without people raising their hand or saying something, it is a space for people to engage. So what is a way to increase the likelihood of engagement is, well, you provide them with sentence stems or Mad Libs or prompts that can be both academic or relational, or even in some ways, a little bit of both. You can also use virtual backgrounds and or motions to help increase engagement. I like the virtual backgrounds in a lot of different sort of creative and unique ways. This is an activity we built called comfort zones. And the idea is you could use it as zones of regulation as well, but green means I'm totally comfortable with it. But if I can't change my virtual background, I can also put up the rock on symbol. Red means I'm crying. This is really uncomfortable. This is really scary for me. If I don't have a virtual background, I can put up the stop sign. And yellow means this is really sort of pushing my comfort zone. But if I don't have the virtual background, I can also go like this. So I know I can't see you, but in a regular classroom environment, not a webinar, you can create dynamic engagement by encouraging lateral movement side to side by creating a background that creates that sense of movement or necessitates movement to show where you're at with something, but making sure it's accessible for everyone. You can also create ways to respond in very physical ways. So utilizing the camera, both from a background perspective and a physical motion perspective, is one way to increase engagement. But you can also use it in an academic sense. So, hey, are you ready to move on? Yes, I'm ready, or I'm totally lost, or I'm kind of in the middle. And you can use it in your own sort of mini formative assessment way to see where your class is at in a very visual way. This is one of my favorites. We call it the nose. And the way it works is a virtual background. But you can also respond using numbers so that you don't need to have students with a virtual background. But if you do go virtual background, then there's these 4 dynamics here. So let's say, like, what is one smell you'd want to smell for the rest of your life? I don't know why smell is such a big part of today, but let's go with it. And so I can use only my nose as a selector tool. So if I say I want to just smell the ocean for the rest of my life, I use my nose to select it. My favorite silly game, but you can also use the chat box or your hands to respond to this in multiple different engaging and dynamic ways. That said, while this is more of a relational activity, we can also use it as a academic activity. For example, what is the equation to figure out the volume of a sphere? So I could have students use their nose to make a selection, or they could, in the chat box, use A or B or C or D. The answer, of course, yellow. I found this on Google. Math is not my strong suit, as far as I know. This is how it goes. People are asking, how do students copy and use the virtual background? One of the things that we can send you as a piece of follow-up is a video of me reviewing how to change your virtual background. That said, that'll be me showing you, but there's lots of resources on Google that you can search, depending if I use Google Meet, how do I change my virtual background? Or if I use Zoom, how do I change my virtual background? There's lots of videos and ways to support you. And if I could encourage all educators to figure out one thing, it's how to change your virtual background, because there are a lot of clever ways that you can use these to show a lot of different ways for participation, relationally, academically, or otherwise. Maybe it's with something like comfort zones. Maybe it's with some binary type things where you have to go left or right. Maybe it's using degrees in order to represent how close you are to understanding something, or movement. There's lots of ways to use those virtual backgrounds to create a dynamic sense of engagement, right? When you're in a camera setting as opposed to a virtual classroom, I have the ability to move forward and backwards in space, left and right. I can bring things forward to the screen. I can show things towards the screen in a lot of ways that encourage people to get up and moving. And if you haven't noticed yet, I am standing when I present, which I do even when I'm doing 6-hour trainings. Getting like a mat or something to stand on is a huge win, but I find that I feel way more engaged when I'm presenting when I'm standing as well. Oops, let's go back here. And let's go to the final tip for the day. You got to go out to go in. So how do you have people break the learning environment to get away from the current classroom with a mission to go and grab something to bring them back? So here is the final activity for the day. In fact, it is a little mini scavenger hunt. And in that scavenger hunt, the prize is a big one, because the prize is going to be one free registration, which is a $200 value, to our August 15th and 16th Equity Implementation and Empathy Conference with some incredible presenters and speakers. So here is the challenge. The blank to blank change, blank and blank. Blank number 1 is going to be found in the link that the team is about to drop into the chat. It is the only emoji on the Equity Implementation and Empathy page. The second link, which the team will drop, is our Twitter page. The second blank, the hint is the end of our header on Twitter. And number 3, the final 2 words in the description of the most recent John and me Houston podcast. So Krista just dropped all 3 links where you can find the potential answer. The chat is now set to private. The first person to share with us the completed sentence, the blank to blank change, blank and blank, wins a free registration to our EIE conference. I'm going to put some music on. Ready, go. Preston Hickert coming in clutch. We had a lot of people who were very close. Some people said the key to culture change is school. Oh, no. Is school and culture close? Not quite. Some people said the key to culture change. A lot of great ideas. Preston is the first one to get it. My buddy Preston out of Missouri, he says the key to culture change, vulnerability, and practice. Indeed, Preston, well said. And we will send you a free registration. Super excited to have you at our training. You can learn more about that in the link that the team has dropped. In fact, I'm going to go up and give you all three of these links one more time. We are super engaged on Twitter, where we host a weekly Twitter chat. We have our Whole Child Conference coming up, which is based around some of the most prolific experts in conversation around equity, implementation, and empathy. It's going to be an epic 2 days. And then, of course, we have our Character Strong podcast, where we put out 2 podcasts a week, and would love to have you give a listen there. People are asking for the answer. The key to culture change is vulnerability and practice. I'm going to go ahead and bring us back to this little menu item right here. This has been the 10 practical tips for digital learning. When we pass along the replay of this video, we will send an adapted version of these slides so that you can go in and re-explore for yourself. Josh is asking, can you explicitly explain go out to go in again? Yeah, absolutely. The whole premise would be, what can we do to create engagement beyond our classroom that brings them back to our classroom virtually? So sending them on missions in their physical space, sending them on missions in the virtual space that leads them back to excited and active engagement, like I just saw in the chat, is one way to best utilize digital learning. Hope these things were helpful for you today. I was super excited to pull some of these thoughts together. Of course, there's lots more ways to utilize digital learning in creative spaces, but these are some of the best practices that we've learned here at Character Strong. Can't wait to share with you more. Would love to see you all at the Empathy, Equity, and Implementation Conference we have coming up. And of course, lots more webinars and things like it on the horizon. Krista will drop those here. But if you registered for today, expect an email today with the replay and some resources that you can use right away to increase virtual and digital engagement. Y'all are the best. What a treat. Thank you for being here today. People from Colombia, from India, and everywhere in between. Y'all are the very best. Thanks for another awesome webinar.